Drink tank. Well, that's a heck of an image to start. Welcome to another episode of Drink Tank. This time will be, I don't know, it's the best name we came up with at the time. I didn't hear you put any suggestions forward that were appropriate for camera.
All of my suggestions were Shut Up, Derek.
Yes,
And no, that was meant to be the title of the show.
Hey, that's not a bad plan. That'll be the podcast.
Shut up.
Oh. So recently...
You'll be hearing that a lot.
Yeah, probably. So recently we both watched the show on what was HBO Max and is now just Max, Scavengers Reign. Yeah, it's an animated...
Is that what it was called?
Scavengers Reign.
Oh.
Yeah. It's based on a... There was what was it? Like a Cartoon Network short some time back. And it ended up getting picked up to do like a whole series, as it turns out.
I love Cartoon Network.
So yeah, well, as I was watching it, I remember I was like, all right, Plummer's got to see this. Like,
Yeah.
It was recommended to me by Brian, actually.
No, Max kept recommending it to me, and I was like, I should watch this at some point.
The poster was intriguing enough. You know, I was like, okay, it's like a person standing on what looks to be the wreckage of a spaceship or something, you know?
Yeah.
And so I knew very, very little about it. I actually didn't know that much. So I kind of went into it blind. And it wasn't until later that I found out it was like adapted from a short cartoon, like an 8-minute short.
That makes sense.
So I figure we'll start real quick with no spoilers. Just would you recommend the show to someone?
If you want to watch a show that's a combination of No Man's Sky, Pitch Black, and Over the Garden Wall, yes, I would recommend it.
Oh man, when you put it like that, that's a pretty good recommendation. I don't know if I can top that. I would recommend it mostly. I would say there's merit to watching it, but there's a few things that keep it out of what I think will be like an Over the Garden Wall tier for me. I have a few issues. I think it's only 12 episodes, but I think it's a little long, but we'll get into that when I get into more spoilery details. So
I'm just going to say that I loved it. Loved it.
You got it.
Highly recommend.
Yeah, it's some really good animation in there. And
that has to be what you want, is the animation and the vibe.
Yeah.
You got to be vibing with the show, man.
It does have what I would consider to be the best title sequence I've seen in a long time.
Oh, I've never skipped it.
I never skipped it. I loved it because it's constantly kind of like a soft reset, like jarring reminder of like what's going on. So I love it. I loved the title sequence. Like I said, I love the animation. There was a lot I liked about it. I did think it was a little long, and so that would probably be it as far as non-spoilery stuff. And
well, I mean, the general premise of the show, real quick, is that these people, these survivors from a spaceship incident, are on a planet with. Well, you first find out that they were sent by a corporation to go somewhere.
Yes, it opens with a corporation saying, "Hey, one of our cargo ships went off track."
And one of the guys saying, "Oh, that sucks. Like, how do we find it?" And then the other guy going, "Company's just gonna write it off.
We're gonna write it off." Yeah, and I was like, "Ooh!" And then it goes into that sweet title sequence.
And then you find a couple of survivors on the planet, and they're trying to live with this extremely inhospitable to life, well, the human life planet.
Right, and they find out some of the biology, how it interacts with each other, and you know.
And then we'll get into spoilers.
So now we're getting into spoilers, but if that sounds like a good setup for a show for you, you're probably gonna like it.
Yeah.
All right. So how do you want to do? You want to do like pros, cons, spoilers wise, or do you want to? How do you want to do a rundown of the plot?
So I don't think it's going to be particularly interesting discussion because I think you're going to have all these problems, and me, I'm just going to be like, I just liked it.
Fair enough.
I just thought it was neat.
Fair enough.
Like a potato.
Like I said, I have a few issues with it that I think keep it out of being like really next level for me. I did make a list of notes.
Okay.
And
I would like to say they're all wrong because I liked it.
You might say they're all wrong.
There might be some good points in there, but I won't let you know.
Pros. I wrote, animation is beautiful. Again, the title sequence, one of my favorites. I can't stress enough how much I love that title sequence. There are strong characters introductions. In the first episode, the characters are, I think, introduced very well to the point where I had an idea of who all 5 of our principal characters were and what their roles were going to be moving forward.
Okay.
That dips a little bit into con territory for me later. But I will say the world feels very alien, and it was kind of exciting for me early on to see the world itself becoming so background and key and them interacting with everything. And I think some of that kind of fell off a little bit later on in the show. So I will start with my first big con, which is only half a joke, people. It's only half a joke. Take a look at this cast of characters, and you tell me which two of them are going to be like the bad guys or / get their butts kicked the whole time. I'll put the graphic up, but it suffers from what I consider very modern day writing, where you're going to have like the one pathetic character.
Okay, hold on. Let me see that again. All right, this character is going to get utterly destroyed.
Right, but
this character is going to become an awesome Superman. This character is trash because why would anyone like him?
He's the bad guy.
Not really, though.
He sort of is, because he doesn't even do it for a noble way. Like, I'll get into that. But I think it's just very much a problem of like modern day writing, because you have like Sam, for example, he's constantly getting his ass kicked, right?
By what?
The world. He takes more damage than anyone. And a couple times he takes damage because it's Ursula's fault for saying such like weird things, right?
But you also have to remember that Ursula's character is extremely inquisitive, and the reason that they're able to, I mean, we don't know. We don't see their backstory. We have to infer it. But the reason that those two were able to get the technology is probably because she experimented with all this stuff,
which would have been nice to show. The fact that we
we see her doing it.
The fact that we jump in. They're one character, what's his name? Cayman. He's the guy who's kind of responsible for their current situation.
Where did you get a fucking printer?
I bought a printer.
What, a color one?
Yeah, a long time ago.
God damn.
It was on sale. It was great.
All right.
It's a Canon home office thing. It was not expensive. All right. So I say that the trial and error part of it, which is inferred, is arguably more exciting. Seeing the interaction and stuff, because some of that happens later. I don't want to make it seem like it's completely gone. Like Ozzy, she discovers a little trial and error stuff later on, vis-a-vis like the fish eating the growth offer and things like that. But the brunt of it is they call down the spaceship at the end of the first episode, and now they're all trying to get back to it, with the exception of Cayman, who goes on his own. We'll talk about him later. But the traveling adventures of Ursula and Sam, which I thought were going to be very exciting, they do get some pretty like classic adventure things. But then there's also times where her careful analytics, like Ursula's careful analytics, end up not going so well, and there doesn't really seem to be much to it. Like you see in the first episode, she panics pretty heavily when the breather falls off, and she goes through her mental process of turning into like a spore, and it freaks her out. And so she ends up being like, okay, this world is a little scary, like she should be a little more nervous. When they're trying to avoid the storm in the second episode, Sam's like, we should probably take refuge behind those rocks and on the cliff. That looks safe. And she goes, no, that thing's eating its young to keep it safe out at sea. We should go into that. It's like, why would you think the inside of a giant like sea monster is going to be safer than a rock formation?
Well, because I think they saw rocks flying over the place.
There was like metal shards. The rocks themselves weren't flying. It was like if you got hit, like it would start growing on you, like these things, and they would cut you. But she sees like these like giant tubules come up, and they start absorbing their babies, which are like the round spheres, right? Yeah. The orbs. And they go in, and she's like, I think it'll be safe in there. Well, it's a hell of a gamble, because you don't know what's on the other end of that tube. You don't know like what's in it.
That was ridiculous.
So for her to do that after we had seen like her notebook, and she was such a scientist and a biologist in the first episode, and we saw how nervous she was to get one thing wrong, like her breathing wrong, it doesn't make sense that suddenly she'd be like, oh, let's just jump in the stomach of this thing. This is further compounded by the fact that then a parasite comes in and wounds Sam, and then she has to kill it with a knife. And I'm like, okay, what? Like this, it was too much, too quick. Like that's only the second episode.
That was awesome. I love that episode.
There's parts I like, but it's just like, it took me out of like, they never should have been in there in the first place. They never should have climbed into the stomach of this alien thing. It's not, I don't get it. And then in the third episode,
I don't think you're supposed to get it.
In the third episode, Ursula, when they're going through like that bone forest, remember that giant wall of like the bone structure? When they're going through it and they're almost at the other side because it starts closing in on them, and Sam runs and jumps and like the bone wall like knocks him out, and she's like, hold on a second, I think there's something over there. And she just turns and wanders off by herself And she sees a sequence that's pretty cool. It's the little alien.
It was really cool.
It was really cool. I admit it's really cool. But again, why would she just run off when they were so close to the exit? And then when she comes out, she's like, I saw something and I went to go look at it. And he says, we're responsible not just for ourselves, but everybody else on the ship. And we cannot have you being so reckless and running off. It's endangering both of us and everyone on the ship if neither of us make it. And he goes, you know, and I can't do this without you. And she looks at him real angry and goes, well, I can do it without you. And then I was like, oh, where did this come from? She does apologize for it, but she never really takes ownership for the fact that she runs off recklessly, not knowing what's over there. And this whole world has been like super dangerous. And there doesn't seem to be any recompense for constantly putting herself in danger and by extension Sam in danger until later on in the episode where
it was like
later on in the season. But it's just, she's a scientist. She shouldn't be wandering off.
She got lured over there.
She did not get lured over there. She admits that she was curious herself and she was just like, I wanted to see what it was. And it's like, okay, I get that there's like curiosity, but when the bone spur wall is closing in around you, this is not the time to wander off on your own.
It wasn't closing around her. She still had the...
It shockingly closes in on her a lot more than you think. Like, she still walks through with like the magic feather thing, but it's like those bone spurs are not like, it's not the tunnel that it was before. It's like very tight. So I didn't really care for that. Because I was like, what is the point of this?
Oh my God, is this all about Scavengers?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it's not all about Scavengers, man. I have stuff for other things we wanted to talk about.
A lot of complaints.
It looks like a lot, but it's pretty much like the same thing. It's just they repeat it too much.
Okay.
So like that's my like her being what we would have assumed to be a lot more cautious. We don't get to see any of that, but we have her entire notebook of how everything interacts with each other. And so we know, like when Kamen was marking things on the wall, we know it was an extended period of time they've been on the planet. So she's had ample time to study the area around them, which is why, like when they pulled like the bug or like the thing off and put it on the face, I'm okay with it because it's been established that they've been here for long enough to experiment.
Right.
These other things like running into the stomach or running off in the bone spur wall, I'm not okay with that because those were impulsive and they were reckless. And she never really apologizes for the fact that she could have jeopardized the whole ship. I mean, she really could have, because Sam probably would have gone back to try and save her, and who knows what would have happened. It was a reckless impulse twice, and I just thought the show is better off without that, and it creates kind of like artificial tension between them briefly. I didn't really care for that. The other thing I didn't really like, I didn't like when Ozzy runs into the other Scavengers, like the actual Scavengers. Like, what were their names? It was, I wrote it down in here. It's like Chris, Barry, and Terrence, I want to say.
Something like that.
Because that's right after, and we said spoilers, right after Levi dies, right? Like 2 episodes after that, maybe even in the very next one, she runs into the actual people.
Right.
I don't care for that arc as much because I loved Ozzy and Levi. Right. Levi becoming self-aware and becoming like almost like the planet's like swamp thing. Yeah. Like all the bio stuff and Levi's ability to communicate. And you just knew Levi was going to end up going against that telepanda ape thing, right? You just knew. Because it was going to be like a mixture of like our world,
duckbill panda. No,
it was like an
panda
ape,
beaver.
It was like an ape-faced panda
beaver.
Yeah, it's so weird.
I loved it.
Well, it was a great villain too. That it kept messing with Kamen's mind. So I liked the villain. I liked that stuff. But I think that because it's in episode 6 out of 12 that they blow up Levi. It's halfway through the season, and I'm like, it's too early. The robot's coming back. Like, the robot's going to come back. So then you're left with nothing but to sit and wait for the robot to essentially return. And I feel if we had cut out the scavenger arc.
At no point was I waiting.
I knew it was coming back. It's too
early.
But
But why would you wait for that when everything else is going on? Like,
because I didn't like the scavenger stuff. So if I'm not invested in her talking with like Chris, Barry, and Terrence, I think, I'm not really that invested in, I'm just waiting for, because Levi was so much more interesting. Just absolutely more interesting, and like the idea of a robot becoming like organic, dreaming, having like feelings, like is way more interesting to me than they're just gonna try and betray you once you get to the spaceship, to the Demeter. It's the same
Demeter.
Demeter. It's like from Dracula.
Or from Greek mythology.
Yeah, I'm going with Dracula. So I was just bummed with, it's too cliche. I've seen that kind of story too many times. And to piggyback on that, I didn't care for when they ran into the survivor lady who was actually part of the giant parasite. I think that once you have like there's been another crash ship and then there's these other people mining like the moon nearby, it makes to feel this abandoned and derelict corner of space awfully small. So it doesn't seem quite so improbable that like another ship would find them at some point.
Well, they explained they're real scavengers who are way off track from a tiny, tiny mining colony or like colony. Like it was astronomical that they were there. It wasn't. They didn't say, "Oh, we're there because blah blah." Blah. It was astronomical. And then the other ship, a ship crashed 100 years ago, 200, 300. We don't know.
A while back. But like I said, it just made it feel like space is awfully small because it seems like people are always hitting the planet. I don't know.
No, I don't think so. I don't think that's valid at all.
I also really didn't care for the that like weird blood flesh golem copy of Sam. Like I didn't care.
That was cool.
I didn't care for that because we're gonna follow that up with him getting infected by the parasite, and those two arcs do the same thing. Is they put Sam's life at danger.
They're not arcs.
They're kind of little arcs.
You keep calling them arcs.
Well, because it's like...
Little arcs is just an episode, dude.
That's like 2 episodes each. They're like 2 episodes each on these things.
Okay.
But
they're half an episode each because there's Ozzy and Levi. So it's like, realistically, it's not an arc. It's an episode of TV.
All right. Well, then I won't say arc, but it's the same thing happening to Sam both times. When he gets the tri-stab, he's going to die. So we see his arm just slowly discolor, and we know that like if it takes over him too much, he turns into the spore thing or whatever, he dies. And I think it's very boring compared to the parasite slowly taking him over, which turns him into like the Superman, like you were saying. And it's a lot more psychological with him. It's more nefarious because he doesn't realize he's doing it. Like when he thinks he has to save Ursula by putting another parasite in her because like that's how he propagates.
Right.
That is infinitely more interesting to me than like the blood golem.
Which it doesn't make that uninteresting.
I think because they accomplished the same goal.
But it's not a goal that's being accomplished. It's things happening.
But
it's not goals for the character. It's just, you're thinking of this as it has to be some kind of streamlined, perfect story contained in itself. Whereas it's just cool shit happening in this world, man. Like, just because this character gets injured once and then injured another time doesn't mean that, like, okay, so I get injured once and that'll never happen again. You liked Blue Eye Samurai.
Yeah.
They got injured every single fucking episode.
Yeah, but Blue Eye Samurai watched like I was playing a video game, so I was able to like click.
And I'm watching this like I'm exploring the fucking world in No Man's Sky, dude.
Yeah, fair enough. I just thought just jump straight to the parasite thing because I'm trying to shave off a couple episodes.
That's wrong. That's the wrong choice. In a show about like exploration and like art. It's a show about exploration and art, and the humans are just kind of like they're exploring with us, and like why would you want to take episodes away? I would have watched that same arc happen over 22 episodes, let alone 12. I would have watched 22 episodes of that show easily with nothing happening.
Maybe if we had started earlier and we saw more of the observation of natural, like how they learned how these things happen, like how they learned to make like the biocord or how they learned.
I would have watched them. I would have watched them heading to the ship for 22 episodes.
Heading to the ship is another kind of interesting thing for me. Like I understand that like we don't understand. We have no reference for the topography. We have no reference for the distance anything is. But when Levi comes back as like the Bioborg, right? Like when they rebuild Levi, Ozzy is apparently struggling close enough to be within earshot because when Ursula shows up at Levi's like camp, so to speak, she hears Ozzy screaming, which means then either Ursula is unaware of what's happening to Ozzy, but that doesn't make sense because she shows up at the end to fight the telepanda ape to save Ozzy, and he's like, you came for me. He's like, of course. Well, you didn't when she was within earshot range. You didn't notice? Like, that was so weird to me that, like, Ursula could hear her and then just run 20 feet or imperceptible amount of distance, but within audio range to go untie her bands after that ape thing ate the chocolate but wouldn't eat the ropes or whatever. Or didn't eat them, I can't remember. But I just thought it was weird that you had, it's like, Levi, you're supposed to, like, I think if they had kept Levi's arc, and we had just seen Levi become more and more like bioorganic throughout the course of the show, and she and Ozzy made it to the ship together versus like Barry and the Scavengers. Because like I said, that was the most generic sci-fi story we've seen. In an otherwise like, you know, pretty entertaining and original in terms of like the creatures and their design and stuff like that. Watching people get to a ship that you know they're just gonna like scavenge of like, I've seen it. So I would have liked the more full philosophical arc with Levi the whole time. And then you don't have to worry when they both get to the ship. It can be a lot more like, you know, like Levi could have like an opinion on like life in cryostasis or something like that. Like coming full circle from being like the tool on the ship to being like the savior of the ship or something like that. I don't know. I wanted something more. And like I said, it's just me. As I was watching it, the thing I was most excited about was Levi becoming organic. And then halfway through the series, they get rid of her, and then they bring her back, and it's already Swamp Thing. And I'm like, I missed so much. The development would have been so cool. Instead, we watch a guy get wrapped up by a plant, which was pretty neat. When he went for the recorder, when Chris threw Barry's recorder.
Oh, that was nasty.
And he gets like, I'm like, see, now that's danger. But I know it sounds like I'm really dumping on this thing. I'm not. This is how you know I really liked it.
You just want unrealistic shit, man.
I don't want it unrealistic. I want it tight.
So you want an entire show about a robot who's turning into...
I don't want an entire show. That's just what I wanted for the arc for Levi when it started, right? Because...
And then if they did that, you'd be going, oh, why are they telling us, not showing us or something?
Oh, because that show... First of all, I will not say that this show is all tell. It is all show. They show us everything. Like, especially that first episode, which is so good. These early episodes, which are so good, because they're showing us these things that people have figured out. They're not explaining it to us. We know they've been there for a while. We can infer the trial and error process. They're just doing them. And so that is showing me what like they've amassed as knowledge. It's not just them sitting there like, and this is the thing, and this is the thing, and this is the thing. And as a matter of fact, one of the things that I really loved early on, especially with Ursula and Sam, is when they're walking and it's in the third episode where Sam's talking about when they found that skull when he was with that other guy on this one derelict moon, and the guy thought it was an omen for his death, and he died a year later to the day, and he's like, I could never imagine giving up so much of myself to something with like so little power, or wherever he says. And like there's cool philosophies that they have early on. And a lot of that dialogue and stuff doesn't continue on as we get closer to the ending. It becomes a lot more mechanical. And I liked the philosophy of the early episodes more than like the more like hard-coded sci-fi near the end.
Well, it's going to be mechanical because that's the goal at that point, is getting to the ship and figuring out what they're going to do once they get there. Like, they're not talking about philosophy anymore. They're talking about how do we save these people, not why should we save these people. Right. It doesn't turn into a philosophical argument.
I thought it would with Levi. I thought Levi was going to have some cool, like, you know, like, well, as like the avatar of this planet, there are going to be some rules to bring these people back.
That would be so... No.
I love that.
That wouldn't be...
That's what I would want.
That's just, like, Levi's still trying to figure out who the hell he is, like... Or she is, whichever one you want to pick, because it doesn't really... It is.
Yeah. Well,
it's a fucking, like, bion... Like,
yeah, I know. The bio... It's like a... Yeah. The biobot.
But Levi doesn't know what it is, but at the end of the show, all it knows is that it wanted to procreate. And it was like, and probably didn't even know that it wanted to do that.
You know what? That plant, too. So that's kind of a weird thing. You know, I'm wondering if you can help me, like, puzzle this one out. So the plants start forming... Right, like the significant plants that at the end of the series, Levi pulls one out and opens the pod, and they got the little Levi's in them. But those plants started forming way before Levi had any interaction with them, because they actually show us in flashback, Levi picks up one of the plants, and that's what taps it, and that's what causes the biomass to integrate with circuits. The plant did that first. So, how are these plants propagating all over the place? Some of the places where like Levi wasn't even there.
Well, I mean, material can pass through plants very.
I think it was that. I think it was that space magic they kind of show there when they're showing all the energy flux in.
Yeah.
I think something around those lines. But I was wondering if I maybe missed something.
Well, it could have just sent a signal about how Levi was now attached to certain things, because it was growing in, and things were growing in it deliberately.
Or like, remember how it beats the bad guy there at the end when it does like this whole like shows like the creation of like that galaxy and everything. It's like all of creation all at once. So I wonder if this is like if they're saying like all that creation has like a temporal flux and it spreads out in both directions.
Apparently that bad guy's name was the Hollow or Hollow.
What? Oh yeah, no, it's in the title. It's in the descriptions. Like in the Hollow continues the rampage. I'm like,
yeah.
what?
I only know that because it was like I watched with closed captions on, and when it's not on screen, he goes Hollow, breathing. I was like, Hollow. All right, well that's fair enough. Apparently it was hollow because it couldn't get enough meat.
Yeah, because it was gluttonous. I get it.
That was crazy.
Yeah, I'm gonna still call it Telepanda Ape.
He just starts killing things because he's mad, and the thing's like,
kills
okay, all right, kill more, please.
Yeah, no, there's some good stuff in it. There were. Like I said, I had such high expectations in those early episodes, and maybe it's my fault for binging it, as opposed to like taking more time to like space it out.
Yep.
And it could be. I mean, it really could be my fault for binging instead of taking my time and sitting. But I had higher expectations. I really did, and I don't know. I still recommend it. I still liked it.
I had no expectations, and it was so good. It's so fucking good.
There you go. 2 for 2. Go watch Scavengers Reign. Let us know what you think. And
he's an idiot.
I'm not an idiot. I just like things.
Derek, you are an albacore around my neck.
An albacore. Anyways, that's all the time we have for this episode of Drink Tank. And we'll catch you guys later. Thanks for watching.